The seven deadly sins, also known as the capital vices or cardinal sins, is a grouping and classification of vices. According to the standard list, they are pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth, which are all contrary to the seven heavenly virtues. In the NBA, there are plenty of players that can represent the seven sins, and today I picked the best ones, in my opinion, that really represent the sins with current players. I've seen many making this style of video, so shout out to Juneplug. So he's been making these videos for rappers and artists, so shout out to him for the idea, and let's get into it. The first sin is lust. Lust is described as the intense desire for a certain thing, and today we're going to be talking about power. When thinking of power in the NBA, that can mean a lot of things, but power usually comes from championships in my opinion. Kevin Durant is the first player that comes to mind. After leaving the Thunder in 2016 to join the Warriors, he was very highly scrutinized, and even still to this day, just to a lesser extent. Many had strong opinions on his move, but chalked it up to the fact that he was doing everything to get a championship, almost throwing away his pride. Since he left the Warriors, he's been trying to build another big three to get to the top of the mountain. Whether it's been in Brooklyn with Kyrie and Harden, or his most recent move to the Suns with Booker and Beal. Durant is one of the best talents we've ever seen in the history of the NBA, and arguably the greatest scorer of all time, but many have challenged his legacy after his initial move to the Bay. Despite the move happening 8 years ago to this point, it seems like he is still doing anything in his power to get back to the top, like any other player would, but in Durant's case, his motives have been more questioned than any other superstar in history. The second sin is gluttony. Gluttony is described as an overconsumption to the point of waste. For this one, I'm going to be talking about Zion Williamson. Coming out of college, Zion was one of the most highly touted prospects of all time, showing that he could do anything at Duke. He was one of my favorite college players ever to watch, as it seemed like every game he would do something special. Since then, he has had a very rocky start to his career. During his first 3 seasons, he would miss 64% of his available games, including a whole season in 2022. Many were quick to attack Zion, as during his time off, it would take a while for him to come back into playing shape, as he had reportedly gone up to 330 pounds after his surgery from an original 285. Some of the biggest names talking about this were Shaq and Kenny on Inside the NBA, and that was put on air for millions to see at the time, and the YouTube clip has over 6 million views to this day. During this time, Zion spoke out about how hard it was mentally to come back from the surgery in the first place, but then have to deal with social media attacking him for this. It seemed like Zion was taking most of the attacks personally too, which didn't help speed up the process. Many questioned if Zion would ever be able to get back on the court, but with his focus, he was able to come back from an injury, and he would average 26, 7, and 4.6 last season, making his second All-Star team and having a great start to the season, and had the Pelicans up to the 3rd seed in the West. He would miss the remainder of the season with a hamstring injury. This season, he has only missed 11 games and has come back into his own, showing that he can be a dominant force in the NBA when he is focused. Greed is the need to continue to take more and more than you need. Once you start to take, it becomes hard to stop, and the player best described by this is James Harden. Over the past decade, Harden has been one of the most scrutinized players in the NBA for many things: playstyle, trade request, and contracts. In the past 4 years, Harden has been on 4 different teams, forcing his way out of every situation he got himself into. It started in Houston, where he wanted out of the situation he had been in for nearly 9 years. Many players ask for their way out of situations, but the way that he got out rubbed many the wrong way. To get out of Houston, he played to a level we have never seen him at, being lackadaisical and almost jogging in every game, showing no effort until they finally felt like they had to get rid of him and sent him to Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Big Three didn't work out, and Harden would make his way out once again, being traded to the 76ers to unite with Daryl Morey. 1 win away from the conference finals last season, everything went bad, as Harden would go 7 for 27 in the final 2 games, and the Sixers would once again be eliminated in the second round, and Harden would fall short of a championship. He then again forced his way out after the Sixers weren't willing to pay him as much as he thought he deserved, and is now on the Clippers, marking his 4th team in 4 years. Maybe this will finally be the opportunity that Harden has been waiting for, but if it's not, what else will Harden ask for? You're only as worth as someone is willing to pay for, but at the end of the day, if no one's willing to pay, you're not going to get paid. Sloth is described as an absence of interest or discipline in something. In this case, basketball. Many players in history could fit this description, but a current player would be Ben Simmons. By now, we're all aware of Simmons' story, as he went from an All-NBA level and the best defender in the NBA at one point to not even being able to get minutes of one of the worst teams in the league. Ben Simmons forced his way out of Philadelphia after his own mental collapse in the 2021 playoffs after he faced scrutiny. During the time, many players on the Sixers still wanted him to come back to the team, including Joel Embiid, who tried to reach out to him multiple times. His collapse seemed to be all mental during the playoffs when he couldn't hit a free throw because the Hawks kept hacking him. After he finally forced his way out and made it to his new team, he has been disappointing, to put it in the nicest way possible. Despite only being 27, we don't know if Simmons will ever be able to return to his former self, and it seems like his mental struggles within the game will overtake any chance we could see him coming back. Many have criticized Simmons in the past for never developing his three-point shot, which also led to his downfall. He's been described as a guy who loves the spotlight and just happens to be good at basketball, which is part of the reason he never worked on getting better. After he got his contract and money, it seemed like he had nothing else to worry about. Wrath was the easiest one on this list to point out. Often described as uncontrolled rage or anger, Draymond Green is probably the first player you guys thought of. Throughout his career, he has been pitted as a dirty player for his countless fights, technicals, and ejections. Despite how you feel about him, Draymond doesn't really care. Some say he's playing hard, some call him the dirtiest player of all time. Either way, you look at him as a disruptor, and his ego and pride can get the best of him more often than not. Creating chaos is part of his game, no matter how you want to chalk it up, and he will continue to do this no matter what you think about it. The Warriors have definitely had problems with him, as he's been suspended for multiple games, even in the finals at one point, but it just seems like Draymond's not going to change. Envy is most commonly described in 3 steps. The first by lowering someone's reputation, the second is joy at someone's misfortune, the third is hatred. Kyrie Irving is the player who comes to mind here because of his way of commenting on past teammates, most commonly LeBron James. It seems like throughout his career after leaving Cleveland, Kyrie would take digs at LeBron, once saying while in Brooklyn that he finally had a teammate in Kevin Durant that he could trust taking big-time shots. LeBron even publicly said he was hurt by this and didn't know why Kyrie would call him out, as he still loved Kyrie like a brother and at the time had no ill will towards him. Envy is also a mix of greed and lust, and Kyrie could be described as both, as his intentions have changed a lot during his career. Once teaming up with LeBron, he decided to leave because he wanted to captain his own team in Boston. He told them that he wanted to re-sign and he wanted to be a Celtic. He would then leave and then create a super team in Brooklyn, kind of burning everything in Boston. When that didn't work out, he has now become a second option again in Dallas. So there's a lot of question marks around Kyrie's career and a lot of things off the court as well too. Pride is deemed as the worst sin. Before this season, we could have described this sin with Damian Lillard, as his pride was holding him back for so long in Portland that some would say that he wasted what could have been a legendary career. He still is one of the best guards of all time at this point and has gone on to do numerous amount of things, but a championship is just something he never achieved, and his pride was holding him back in Portland. For now, we'll pivot to someone who believes they're a lot better than they truly are, and recently has had one of his quotes backfire. Kyle Kuzma tweeted out, "At this point, it's just don't be that team," referring to the Detroit Pistons, who were in the midst of the worst losing streak in NBA history. Since that tweet, the Pistons are actually above the Wizards in the standings, and Kuzma has now become the leader of the team they didn't want to be. Let me know down below what you guys think, and if you would change any of these. Who are some players that came to your mind when you were thinking about these sins? And let me know if you guys like this different style video. I know a lot of the videos that we do may be going over players' careers. This is a lot different than that. So let me know down below if you guys want to see a part 2, or if you want to see me do the heavenly sins next. And make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.